another episode of the podcast. My name is Jalulu, and I am so excited that you are here. So before we jump in and before I talk about the intention about today's episode, I just want us to arrive. Just take a deep breath, arrive right here. Maybe you're driving, maybe you're out for a run, at the gym, cooking a meal, in transit, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. I would love for you to just be right here, right now, just for a second. Like, open your chest and spread out your arms and just like take up space. Take up space all you can. Like, feel yourself shine like the star that you are. That feels good. Okay. So excited that you're here. I recently kicked off the podcast and I have had so many ideas come in to that wants to come through on the podcast. I have so many themes that I want to share, learnings I want to talk about, and reflections that I've made about my own career for the last, decade of my life that I feel is really coming to the surface and wanting to be shared. So I'm super curious to see the direction that this podcast is going to go in. I am, just to reiterate and to reestablish, re-anchor the intention of the podcast. For myself, this is a big experiment. It is a big way for me to just get on here, click record. I'm not going to edit these episodes. I'm literally just going to start talking and see what comes through. I know that part of that is, it's opening my throat chakra and really speaking my truth, speaking from the heart. I'm sitting here with my eyes closed and just literally I feel like I want to have a one-to-one talk. I really want to feel like we are, two besties sitting in the car going somewhere and we're just like having a chat, and it feels so natural. It feels very intimate, and it feels like, I'm there with you. That is how I would love for this to feel. So yeah, my personal expression, my super conscious playground, as I always say, and what has wanted to come through on the playground recently has been, or is, sharing my story. And I actually thought that I was going to wait with this for a long time because I have just kind of given birth to my alter ego, who is Jalulu, and just kind of put my personal life in the background. And I felt like as part of that, I wanted to just give myself as Jalulu the space to just see where it wanted to go, right? See what are the messages that wanted to come through? What did it look like? What did it sound like? How is it different from the previous chapters of my career and life? And what I got to was that I really want to share my journey because I think it will give a lot more context of who I am, where I come from, and how I actually got to exactly where I am today. And today is a part of my journey where I feel like I'm kicking off the third act. I am kicking off the third act of my life. And the last decade and a bit more of my career has been the training wheels for me to get here today. And so I feel like sharing the story will help give a better perspective on who I am, how I serve, and what my mission is here in this life, and definitely for the foreseeable future. The other intention with today's episode is really that I want to make it more comfortable for myself to just share while I'm in the build. Because it's something that I don't regret it, because I don't use that word. I don't regret anything. I think that everything is meant to be exactly as it is. And we need to just find the lessons and the blessings inside of every event that we are exposed to. That said, I wish I had documented and shared my journey inside of the two first acts of my career, where the first act was building a tech company as a startup founder. I'll get more into that in a moment. And then the second act as going into learning the ropes of private equity and the finance industry and actually starting to acquire businesses as a means to create freedom for myself and for other women. And now going into the third act, I want to share this journey because the third act looks so different from the two firsts. And what I am getting to now and where I'm going from this point onwards is really building my brand. It's really about the branding. It is about sharing my message. It's about sharing the learnings. I feel like I have lived a full lifetime, if not two, in the last decade of my career because of the things that I have been exposed to. And I want to share it because one of my big missions here is unleashing and awakening the inner genius in every one of us. And I'm especially focused on helping other women. I want to see other women succeed and flourish and, bloom into the full and majestic flower that we all are. And I think that is how, and that is one of the ways that we will make this world so much better, is by all of us coming into our inner genius and contact with our inner artist. Because when we are in contact and creating from that innocent place of our inner artist, magic happens. Like true magic is released when we can play from a place of innocence. When you see a child play, they don't think about if you're gonna judge them. They don't think about what others are gonna think. They don't worry about how others will perceive them or if they're good enough from creating that painting or that thing that they're creating. Like that is the most beautiful, innocent state of creation. And when we are in that state, we are untouchable. And we blaze new trails and show others how success is possible in different ways. Another reason why this is very important to me is that I started out and I'll get into the story in a second, but I started out in the tech industry as a woman back in 2013. So this is a long time ago, right? It's 11 years ago. And there were no role models. There were no female role models. The narrative online and in the role models, like the role models that I had, that I could look up to, were all men. It was very aggressive, very dominating, very, growth over everything else men. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think because the masculine is inherently more assertive and, at times often also aggressive, then that just tends to be the narrative that we hear and that we see more of, right? Like right now, Alex Hermosi is such a good example. If you don't know him, check him out. He is like blowing up online and has been doing so for a long time. Like I think he's really making himself into a household name at this point. And when he talks, what we see and what is being, he's paying a lot of money to be so front and center in terms of in our awareness, right? Like he has free rental space in all of our minds at this point because he is just everywhere you look, at least in some circles. And, we tend to see the masculine and the narrative so much more than we do the feminine, because the feminine doesn't need to be so in your face. It is not part of the energy. And there's a lot of women that has a lot of masculine that don't mind being, out there and in our faces. But it's just it's not as natural as it is for the masculine. And you can call it, men, women, masculine, feminine. It doesn't really matter about the gender. I'm more here referring to the energy of it. So anyway, that was a tangent. All of that to say that I want to show other women that it can be done differently. I want to show women that there is a different approach and just, establishing a blueprint that looks very different from what we see as the common denominator of what is success in the marketplace. Because it's not true. It's not the only way to do it. And that is what we're told. And it's very difficult to stay in our power and to feel that we are on the right path when everything around us and the media, social media, these personas that goes out and are very loud about how you become successful, keeps telling us how we're successful. So it's really like an invitation. It's an invitation for you to tap into your own power and really, see this as another, you take this for what you want it to be, right? Like make it what you want it to be. This might be for some and it might not be for others. And I just would love to share my story in the build of this thing because I think it's very important. I think it's super important, and I wish I had had this myself when I started out more than 10 years ago. So yeah, there you have it. That was a very long intro, but that was like the kickoff for today's episode. So I want to recap back to the beginning of my career and what actually kicked it all off. And I'm going to try to keep this short. So I've always had a very, very deep-seated need for freedom. Always had a deep-seated need for defining success on my own terms and to not be a puzzle piece of, or a gear in the bigger system. I have never felt compelled to that. And it started very early when I attended university at 18. And shortly after I got to university, I realized I have no desire to be part of the system. I don't have any desire to be conforming to how this path has laid out before me. And I can basically see like the next 20 years of my life unfolding if I were to walk this path. And it scared me. It scared me so much. I had no interest in that. So the deep-seated need for and want for freedom that has been my driver throughout this entire time, and it still is, was very palpable. It was very tangible back then. So what happened was that I got an idea for a tech company, and I ended up dropping out of university. I started my first company at around age 19, and this company I built to over the coming 6-7 years. And it was basically a tech company. It was in the education space, ironically. And what we were doing we called it the Spotify for textbooks. So basically, all of your textbooks as a student on a monthly subscription digitally. Because I was very frustrated with you having to buy for enormous amounts of money of new books that were basically the same as last year's, but because the incredible, noble, very ethical publishers in publishing industry change the numbers of the page every year to make it a new version, then of course we had to buy new books, and this was something that deeply pissed me off. So I wanted to do something about it. So that was my first company. Long story short, this journey took me through so many experiences of self-development, of testing my boundaries, of wearing all the different hats, from learning about software development to being a product owner, basically, or product manager to develop the product, working with a team, hiring, firing, raising capital, you name it. And it was part of that experience. So I ended up building this company to around 40 people. At the height of it, we were 40 people. I was the CEO. This was when I was around 24. And we had raised around $10 million in investor capital. So as you can see, this was like, we were trying to do pretty big stuff at the time, and really trying to disrupt an industry that was very old, very dusty. The takeaway I want to make from this whole part of my act one, as I call it, is that I started out building a business because I wanted freedom for myself. I started out with the intention of, I want to be my own boss. I don't want to conform to how society wants me to be a cog in the machinery. I want to make my own rules. I want to do things my way. And I was so clear about that. The funny thing is that I was so young at this time that I didn't know what the decisions that I made would lead to, right? So in roundabout ways, me starting a company and going the route that I did, for so many reasons that I will probably get into in another episode, actually ended up stealing my freedom away. I actually ended up shackling myself because I suddenly had very high-level professional investors on the board. I had a team. I had the responsibility of putting food on the table for around 40 families. Whereas if we didn't hit our targets, if we didn't raise the next round of capital from investors, if we didn't, fill in the blank, these people wouldn't be able to feed their kids. They wouldn't be able to pay their rent. And that is like that is a massive responsibility as a 23, 24-year-old person. So I ended up putting myself under such an immense amount of pressure very early on, and that actually ended up stealing my freedom away. So this is what happens, right? In life, like you have to be very intentional, not just about what you want, but also how you want it. And that is something that I didn't have the wisdom, and I didn't have the life experience to determine that for myself. So yeah, that was like the act number one. In the middle of that, I had a spiritual awakening, which is a whole other story. Had a spiritual awakening, realized that I was not walking the right path anymore, that this was no longer my path. And then I ended up selling my part of the company, and wanted to give myself some space and time to just figure out, okay, what is it actually that I am here to do? What does that look like, and how can I best serve in this lifetime? And that journey, act one being done with, was an incredible experience. It gave me so much in terms of figuring out who I even am, and also how I want to live my life. This was also the times where I was very fortunate to make it onto the Forbes 30 under 30 list for Europe. I had awards up the yin yang for the Scandinavian and Northern European region. And it was just a very fun time. We were in the media very often. I was in live television. I frequently had journalists calling me and asking for the newest insight on how the business was going. And it was just very untraditional because I was very young. I was a woman. It was not very often seen. So the media kind of loved us. Okay, so moving into act number two. Then I had a bit of time to really just percolate on or assimilate, like, okay, what does this next chapter look like? What do I really want to do? I don't want to jump in head first and just build the next thing. I want to really take my sweet time. Take my sweet time to figure out, what does this look like? How can I really infuse this with the deepest seat of my purpose in a way where it really can make a difference for others out there? And again, the want and the need and the driver of the freedom to do what I want, with whom I want, when I want, was the spearhead of this next era. It started out with, today my holding company is called Celestial, and I will get into that in a second. But Celestial was actually started back in 2020, and it was started as a question. And the question was, can you play your way to success? Right? So can you play your way to success? That was the whole theme upon which Celestial was founded. And it's so fun to think about now, where I have really come 360 full circle around and back to the playground, right? Like back to unleashing my inner genius on my superconscious playground. And I keep saying that because it is so important that we, in my life, at least for me, it's so important that we play. It's so important that we find that place of innocence in our inner artist and start to bring that version of us out, because that is what the world needs much more of. I read an article called The Age of Average, and just from the headline, you can imagine what that is about. So I don't want to get more into that, but that is what I feel like we're in. We have been in an age of average for so long. People look the same, they dress the same, they sound the same. It's like, it's so freaking boring. Like, we are starved for authenticity in this world. We are starved for people's unique radiance. And I know that when I see people that are uniquely, authentically, radically themselves, I can't help but look. They're so radically themselves and so authentic that it's like they shine like a star. They shine so brightly that we can't help but look. And that is, yeah, I've said this already, but I'm just gonna, reiterate it right again. That is one of the reasons why we are here. An invitation. Yes. Okay. So that is where Celestial started. It started as an interview series to talk with incredible women that have defined success in their own terms in very different ways than what you would consider traditional. And the funny thing is, like, this interview series never got released. It was a podcast series and it never got released, but that was like, it was the beginning of Celestial. From here, my journey went into private equity. And if you don't know what private equity is, the very short description is that it's in the finance space. It is basically the act of buying and selling private companies. So, like you can buy stocks on the stock market, then in private equity, it's the buying and selling of private companies. So private companies are, for example, startups. It's companies that are not traded publicly. And basically, this is like one of the biggest industries in the entire world. It is massive. It is private equity companies own majority of the biggest companies in the world. And whenever a big company is acquired, unless it's in the tech space, but it's also in the tech space, but unless it's in the tech space, then it's most likely a private equity firm going in and swooping up a company. So I, like, in roundabout ways, made my way into the private equity space. And here I met a mentor that over time taught me the ropes of how to actually do this thing in private equity. He showed me how it's possible to buy businesses, to buy companies using the financial tools that we have available to us. And I remember, if you can imagine, like, the mind blown emoji, like, that is how I felt. I was like, what are you talking about? Are you telling me that you don't need to be a multimillionaire to buy companies? Are you telling me that you don't need to be a massive investment fund to buy companies? That I can actually do it as a person without millions and millions in the bank? And the answer to that was yes. So this really kicked off my second act of getting into private equity and getting into buying businesses as a method to create freedom for myself and the women around me. And shortly after, I, parted ways with my mentor, and I created a whole curriculum for how to buy businesses, like the step-by-step guide, more or less, for how to do it, and really got it under my skin, right? And started to learn, what does the playbook actually look like? I met my business partner, Jennifer, and this was like such a serendipitous event, and we have been inseparable ever since. And this is about 3 years ago at this point. So what we very quickly realized was that we were dreaming the same dream. So her and I were basically up to the very same thing of empowering women from a perspective of helping women tap into their inner genius and really unleash their innermost artist and create the life of their dreams, and having the financial resources to do so. Because we need to be financially free to really not have to worry about paying the bills and feeding our kids, and then being in a place of pure creation. And so what Jennifer's version of this was from her experience, which I will get into at another time. Like, she's one of the most exceptional women that I've ever met. She is so powerful. And she had done a lot of work with a lot of women in the past and realized that, in her words, what we need is mentorship and money. Whenever women come into their fullest, most empowered state and they're ready to change the world for themselves, for their families, for their communities, or by serving others, like the more global community, in bigger ways, they always, very often, get stalled at the lack of mentorship. So people that have gone before them, aka what we talked about just before, the role models, right? How you can do it your own way. So mentorship and money. So it is the ones that walk before you, the role models that we can look up to, and it is the resources to actually do the thing. So our path crossed, and Celestial 2.0, or this is actually a Celestial 1.0. I would say my own beginning with Celestial was more like the seed getting planted. And so we founded this holding company together, and since then have acquired a handful of businesses, mainly digital businesses, super exciting, like same playbook, same audience, very similar, and just like super fun. But my point with all of this is to say that I value my own freedom so much, and I am so devoted and committed to helping other women up level, that I literally taught myself how to be a player in the private equity field, how to buy businesses, how to make offers on businesses, finance these acquisitions, and how to take them over and make them profitable, thriving businesses afterwards. All of this because I want to create freedom for myself, and I want to create freedom for the women around me. So that tells you a bit about my background and where I'm coming from and how devoted. And this really dropped in for me in the last couple of days, where I've been reflecting over, what does this next chapter actually look like? Like, what is it that what is the texture that it's going to take? Because that's still kind of dropping in for me. But one of the big realizations was that, wow, I have not wavered from the path of finding methods and systems and strategies for creating financial freedom and freedom to do what we want, with whom we want, when we want, through this entire thing. That has been the common denominator, and it's so clear to me now, in retrospect, looking back, how deeply devoted I have been to that cause since the very beginning. And it started out with a certain motivation that was, part of my own trauma and what really drove me to be overly ambitious and an insecure overachiever and all that good stuff. But it quickly turned into something way more and way deeper. And that depth of the feeling like you are following your calling, even that it sometimes doesn't make sense and it's not logical, it's not rational, you don't exactly understand why you're taking the step that you are, but you just know that it's right. That all kind of connected for me recently. And I am now seeing how I am so deeply devoted to finding strategies and ways to create freedom for ourselves, and then empowering other women to do the same. Yes. So that was Act 1 and 2, put very, very briefly. Now, the present and future of Act 3, which is basically beginning now, is where I really want to share much more of this journey. I want to build way more in public. I want to be much more vulnerable and share, the ups and downs and the learnings along the way, and hopefully helping a few of you listening and tuning in as we get there. And I realized this morning, as I was sitting in meditation and just kind of doing my intention setting for this episode, that it actually can be summarized by 3 B's. So I try to do everything with G's, because G Lulu, my creative agency's House of G, and yeah, there's a lot of wordplay that you can do with G. But this is a B. So we have Act 1, 2, and 3, and basically it's the 3 areas that I think that I can be of biggest, most radical service to everyone out there, and hopefully to the women that resonates with this, that connects with me, and that feels like, you and me are the ones sitting in the car chit-chatting right now. I really hope that this is something that can initiate something in you. And I would love to get your feedback on if this is something that hits home, or if there's any questions or otherwise. But anyway, the 3 B's are building businesses, it's buying businesses, and it's branding businesses. So I would say overarching, those are the 3 themes that I think I can be of most service to for everyone tuning in, and even just for myself assimilating this down to what does that actually look like, right? And that's what I'm about to figure out in this 3rd act. And this 3rd act, the reason why I say, branding is because that's what this chapter is about. I feel super deeply called to build my personal brand. I feel deeply called to share my message and now share the learnings and reflections that I have made over the last decade of my career, going a bit of a untraditional path compared to a lot of others. And just showing that the blueprint for success can look very different. Like, it doesn't have to look like the Alex Hormozi's or the Mark Zuckerbergs or whoever, right? Like, we can define success on our own terms. And that is really where our inner genius comes out to play. When we allow that, when we let that unfolding happen, and we allow ourselves to bloom into that majestic flower instead of standing, half tall and not really blooming fully. Like, that's so sad. Makes me so sad to think about how many of us actually never blooms into our fullest potential. And yeah, it's something I'm terrified of. I want to bloom into my fullest potential and more. So I am just giving it all in this lifetime. I'm like, let's see how far we can take this bee and just like get after it. So yeah, again, I feel like this is always an invitation. Like, it's always like, I have the feeling of this being an invitation. It's like, I want you to come with me. I want you to come with me. This is such a fun journey. It is so challenging. It is so, sometimes it feels so momentous. It feels like you're climbing one mountain after the other. But oh my God, is it worth it? Is it worth it? Yes, it is. It's amazing. Okay, so with all of that said, I feel like this next chapter is really about the branding. Like I said, the first act was the building, and that is for me, I think, very focused on fundraising, because that is what I get the most questions about. It is really about, how do you fundraise? How do you find investors if you are on the track of wanting to build a company or a startup? It's not for everyone, and I really have strong advice that I would love to share, not in this episode, but maybe on another episode, for what are the considerations to make when you go to build a startup, and also how can you make sure to keep your feminine essence and to stay in the life that you want to live while doing that. Because I could write a whole book on the startup industry and how so much of it is like a freaking illusion, and a lot of founders being grinded down to the bone for the sake of a few financial institutions that already have billions and billions in their portfolios can win a few extra percentage points. So that's a whole other story. So I want the intentions of why you want to do startups and building a business to be coming from the right place. Because there's a lot of incredible female founders out there that really wants to change something for the better and feel super devoted to their mission. And when that's the case, like, friggin' amazing. I love that. So I want to help those women by sharing my experience of how to fundraise, and that's the build part. The next part is for all the women out there that wants to build passive income streams, that maybe they want to own a business, but they don't want to start it from the ground up. Then there's a whole, this is a whole topic in and of itself, and could be a whole brand just in and of itself. If you know Cody Sanchez, then she is championing this topic and have been for the last couple of years, and is really about buying businesses. So instead of building them, you can buy them and then continue building them. So that means that you don't have to get into the grind work of the very initial startup, where you need to expend the absolute most amount of energy to get something off the ground, right? So the starting phase of any business is always the most difficult. And when you buy a business, you kind of skip that. And you already have paying customers. You already have a history of loyal clients, potentially, right? Depends on the business. You already have a team of people running the business, and ideally the business is already profitable. So you basically buy cash flow. And this was such a revolutionizing idea when I first learned it. But that's what I want to share with you, because now we've been doing this for like 3-4 years, and we've seen a lot of stuff. We've made a lot of mistakes, and we have learned so much along the way. Going from knowing absolutely nothing to actually executing a handful of acquisitions, which is actually kind of similar to what Alex Hormozi and Layla Hormozi are doing with acquisition.com. Like, they are buying businesses, right? So we are doing the same. We're just in a bit of a different price range than they are, or size of business. So anyway, all that to say that the build the buy is the second act, and I want to share how to do that. And it is a method that is different from what a lot of people talk about of how to create a more significant net worth for yourself. It's also a method to create much more cash flow. Cash is king, so that's always relevant. And really just, create a life of financial freedom. And also inside of that, debunking the myth that you have to run the business yourself. You don't necessarily have to. You have to get to a point of being okay with other people managing and overseeing. And that requires, I think, some inner work and some energetic alignment to that future version of you. But it's definitely possible. And that's what we're doing in Celestial right now. And then this bringing me to today and to the next and third act, which is branding. And what I'm really feeling is the call to do much more of my personal branding, to be doubling down on sharing just the process on the podcast. I feel like the short form format on socials is very limiting, and it doesn't allow for the full expression. So that's why I wanted to do the podcast alongside. I find it very, very important for us to not get so superficial that we get stuck in headlines and catchy, hooks from reels and carousels, and then take that as quote unquote the learning, because that is way too superficial and it doesn't give the essence of what we are trying to say away. So the podcast is super important, and that is the purpose, one of the purposes also for doing this longer form content and sharing it with all you guys. Yes, so the branding has different sides. First of all, it is the personal branding and just sharing this journey. And I've said this several times now, but I'm going to say it one more time. It is to share the journey and just build in public, because I want to show that there's a different blueprint. I want to show that I can just take a super conscious playground and make it into something radically successful. And a part of that is my House of G studio. And how that actually started was by creating visual brand identities. So like actual brands, but for some of the businesses in our portfolio. And I realized that creating brand designs, like brand identities, actually was a massive creative outlet for me, and in a way where I really could just let my creative flow freely through me and just create something extraordinary. You can check some of my work from the studio on House of G Studio on Instagram. We have a few of the portfolios that we've created on there just for fun. And really, I think like something bigger is coming through on the branding side, because really it is, when you build brand, you create the stage. You create the stage from which your message can be shared. And we are seeing that being more available, more possible, more accessible than it ever has been before, with the state of social media and with where the algorithm is for these platforms, and just how we're able to start speaking to the entire world from our bedroom, right? And yeah, so with all of that said, there are the three acts, and the intention that I've mentioned several times throughout this episode that is now getting quite lengthy, but really, opening up more for the process that I am in as I'm going into this third act. And as part of that, really, really, really invite you to, and would love to hear your feedback and ideas or opinions on this episode. I really would love to hear, how does it feel, or how does it land with everything I shared in this episode, with the three acts, the building, the buying, and the branding. How you see that could potentially, if at all, could help you. Like, what are you looking for in your career? Are you building a company? I would love to hear from you. Are you about to brand your company? Because that has been a challenge and you just haven't hit the right spot. I would love to hear that. Are you looking at buying companies? I think it's less, but it's something, and it's an area that I just find so deeply fascinating, because it is such a sophisticated way of doing business, and it's actually not that hard. It's very simple when you get into the weeds of it. But yeah, anyway, hit me up on Instagram. I would love to hear from you, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and just really would love to ignite the conversation with the ones of you listening, and just like start to get more into the weeds of everything, and ignite this third act with fireworks and seeing where it's gonna go. So you can find me on Instagram on Geelulu, and that is GEELULU_, and that is Geelulu. And then I will round off today's episode and say thank you so much for tuning in, for staying with me till the very end. And I appreciate you so deeply, and look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Bye for now.